This is the Slots and Sockets podcast, episode number 8. AMD gives performance to everybody. And I am your host, IRD Moose, and my goofball next to me there is...
Turbo Penguin. How's it going? Internet-topia.
Hello, Internet-topia. Hello, Turbo. Good to chat with you again. So, in today's episode, we've got a few stories, and we're changing the format up a little bit. We're going to try and keep it shorter than we have in the earlier episodes. But to start off, we're going to talk about the R5 7600 from AMD. Intel not just cutting employees now. Some stability fixes, a little bit in RDNA 4. But the big story of the week, and we're going to jump right into this one, is AMD helped everybody get a little performance this week with the new Windows 11 patch for 23.8.2 that was supposed to be exclusive to 24H2.
Yes. And one thing to just kind of point this out, I think a lot of people are saying, oh my goodness, it's so nice. I think one of the things we got to realize is that this was a planned Windows upgrade. Microsoft has to take 100% of the benefit for this. I think AMD saying, hey, this is how we tested. We were using this and it's faster. I think then everyone's like, oh my gosh, AMD found something. No, I just think they were using the newest version. But there is, and I think this is true for pretty much any modern processor within probably the last 6 or 7 years is going to see some form of bump or another. Newer processors are going to see bigger bumps. Older processors, it's kind of hit and miss. There is also some truth that there might be some games that don't see a performance bump with this. I think a lot of this is coming down to really the scheduler more than anything else.
Yep.
And then optimizations for newer cores.
More modern branch prediction and all that stuff. Because, I mean, literally everything we use lives and dies based on branch prediction. And that's the big fix, is fixing the way Microsoft handled the branch prediction.
I also think that there's probably some understanding on that, where we're going to see some modifications in drivers in the next couple of months. Probably more on AMD side than anything else, as they kind of get a better understanding of this branch prediction. So if you're getting 5 to 7% in a game, with some driver updates, could we see that, 8 to 10, 11, maybe? It just depends on what you're getting. I will say it's going to be super important to be looking at motherboard drivers, especially those people who have 7,000 and 9,000 series GPUs, and any 7,000 series or higher AMD laptop CPUs are going to need to be really watching out for BIOS updates and driver updates. I believe that those two things are going to be key. I think a lot of the 9,000 series problems may actually also trickle down to some performance bumps on the 7,000 series, where we're going to get bumps on both. I think this is kind of like a free upgrade for 7,000 users. And to be honest, sort of really think that this is more for 7800X 3D users, it's like, here, have some cake, and you can eat it too, because we have more cake coming. So those early adopters of the 7800X 3D, and they love their processors, as you should. I think that over time, that processor is going to get better, and it's going to be kind of like, at least for that generation, and maybe even for this generation, maybe a little difficult. Maybe that 7800X 3D was a little too strong, and they're going to keep adding more performance onto it. It's only going to get better with some age. So
yeah, and with better branch prediction, the more stuff you can pipeline straight into that 3D V cache, the faster your processor can get to it and keep on moving. So, keeping us moving, let's get on to the 7600X3D Micro Center bundle. Hope you got a Micro
Yes,
Center near you, because I don't.
I do. Moose has to
Lucky.
come fly to see me,
Yeah,
and then
either
then we
that or I
can go
have
to
to
a
go to
Micro Center.
California. Ugh. But yeah.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
So 7600X3D, and it's a really interesting fit because it's a 6-core, but it's also going to be the 7000 series and X3D, and it's like, that's interesting. Where is this coming in? There's rumors, and I think that this is going to slot in at a really unique price, $299 for the CPU, and I think this is more or less because they're going to stop the 5800X3D. That processor is still selling fairly strong. And if you drop that off, you still have the 57 and 5600 and the AM4. And to be honest, AMD, you can stop releasing AM4 CPUs because at this point, I
Right?
think you've really done a very good job at proving your point that it's the most epic platform there ever was. Let's start kind of filling out the AM5 platform. Um, it's done. And unless you have some way of coming out with a 5999 X3D where you have 72 cores and 5 terabytes of X3D cache, I think we're good.
Yep. Yeah, and it really is time for the 5000 series to kind of die off, because it's this part at the price point looks really reasonable, but when you look at the bundle, it's got 32 gigs of kind of unspecified CL32 DDR5 at running at 6000 mega transfers, and a tough gaming B650 plus Wi-Fi for $449. That's almost a complete system for less than the price of a PlayStation 5 that will run circles around the PlayStation 5, and then you have a GPU ready to go. Not the greatest, but it'll at least get you in the door for some games. And I think that's kind of where AMD was targeting this one, because they were seeing a lot of people going for that 5800X3D. And this one it's not quite the performance of the 5800, but it's new enough generation that it makes a lot of sense to go to it.
Okay, so let's think about this. Christmas time rolls around. 7600X3D, 32 gigs of RAM, motherboard, and an 8800 XT. If you can get 4080 performance, this is going to be a bundle of amazing epic proportions, because where that we're expecting 8800 XT to be, that's going to be motherboard, processor, RAM, graphics card for a 4080 with X3D at about $1,000. You could build this in your motherboard box and a 557, maybe a 750 watt power supply, and a reasonable size SSD for $100. I mean, you could be building a really, really good performing gaming budget PC. This is going to be very popular, I think, this October, November, December.
Yep.
I think that this is a smart play from them. I'm sort of surprised that we don't see a 9600 X3D, but I sort of have the inkling and the thought that maybe they want to kind of buy themselves some times and sort out 9000 series before an X3D part comes in. Plus, it would be really strange for them to come out with a 9600 X3D if they weren't ready for the 98. So I think it makes sense. And at the price point, I mean, guys, keep in mind, a 7600 X3D, yes, it's going to be slower than the 7800 X3D. We get it. But at that price point, you're going to be really hard. And the system integrators have got to be looking at this saying, we have to find something to fit into that budget piece. And this is just going to beat the socks off of anything that Intel has at this price point.
Yeah.
What are you looking at? A 14500? non-K part, I mean, they're not even going to be close. AMD has always done really good with this budget and this value gamer segment, and this is the new definition for value gamer. I don't think Intel has a response because, to be honest, I don't think they have anything that could respond at this price point because they're still using a really expensive node. So
Yeah.
we'll
Well, and
see how that looks. Do we have? I don't think we've seen benchmarks for 7600 X3D yet, have we?
I haven't, but the thing that's the real the killer app for me for this is it puts you on AM5. So you're on the current socket. If you're a high schooler who's kind of getting into gaming, and this is something that, oh well, I want to get on Fortnite, I want to have the best experience there, I want to try some of these things, I want to get in on the Steam sales and worship Gaben as he should be, then this is your foot in the door, because with that board, with the B650, that opens you up to running a 9000 series part down the line,
Absolutely.
and potentially whatever next series, because if AMD sticks to their pattern, we're going to see the B650 be good for 2-3 generations of CPU, and then the B650s will start falling off, and the 750s will be the kind of low end at that point. But you've got potentially access to 3 generations of CPU with 32 gigs of quite good RAM as far as speed and CAS latency. So it's, even if you saved a bunch of money and just said, you know what, I'm going to stick with the processor graphics for now, see if this is something I like getting into, you could be into a gaming machine for, let's say, $50 for a case at Micro Center. Like some of the $50 cases I've seen on Micro Center's site, because granted, I haven't gone personally, are really attractive and reasonable picks. Some, they're in the old Corsair Carbide, what was it, the 200R and the 200T, that was a solid budget case. So for 550, maybe $600 with a 1 terabyte SSD, you're talking about a system that rivals a PlayStation, rivals the current Xbox, and really doesn't need more than an OS, and you're good to go.
So the only thing I want to point out, and there were some people who were the talking heads about how this isn't that good of a deal, because they were saying, well, you could get a 5700 X3D and build a better gaming performance. And I'm like, okay, first and foremost, I doubt that. I do believe the 7600X will beat the 5700X 3D all day long. But I think the other piece that people need to keep in mind, you are on the AM5 platform. We know that there's the 9000 series. We know 10,000, the next generation is going to be on there. Okay. So look at what you have with the 1700X. If you were an early adopter for the 1700, 1800X, and you bought an X470 board, okay, you were able to upgrade from the 1800X to the 2800X, the 3700X, the 5800X, and then the 5800X 3D. Now you can say that okay, the 5800X, the X3D weren't really generationally. I would argue still that X3D really made a huge difference in the performance between between those two. So let's call it 4.5 generations.
Yep.
If you can get 4 generations or 3 generations of processors on this, you're going to be able to buy this bundle and ride this as an upgrade for at least until 26, most likely 27. The longevity of this board is going to be really good. And the other thing to keep in mind with Micro Center, because I've been there, if you go into the Micro Center and pick it up in person, you do have to pick these up in person, by the way. You cannot buy them and ship them. The really interesting thing about this kit is going to be, and you show up and you don't like the Asus motherboard, you can pay for another $30 or $40. You can upgrade to an MSI or a Gigabyte or wherever your heart so chooses if you like ASRock. So you can, for a little bit more, go up to a different board if
Yep.
you like.
Yep.
They'll give you some options, and some of those, if you're an MSI person, it's like 25 or $30. I don't know what it'll actually be. We haven't actually seen the final numbers here because it's still coming, but they Micro Center has said it's coming and they've released the price, so we know what you're going to get. I don't think we've seen an official date quite yet, but I know it's going to be here fairly soon. But we will be seeing these in the system integrators very heavily.
Yeah.
I think you're going to be getting this Micro Center, or you can go to your favorite system integrator. But love it. Again,
And when we see the 8800 XT, I have a feeling we'll start seeing bundles with that as well, where they knock a little bit off of the 88. And, if you're doing a starter gaming PC, or, your cool guy system that you built back in the pandemic blows up on you and you need to just get back and running again, if you've got a Micro Center nearby, it's a mistake not to get this, I think. Especially with Micro Center's habit of letting you upgrade. Because if you go to the next board up, that opens you up to Gen 5 PCI Express. That opens you up to a few other potential options that really extend the life. Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. There's USB upgrades. There's PCI Express upgrades. There's SSD upgrades, with the M.2 slots. I mean, AM5 is better than AM4. I don't think there's anybody who will disagree with that. I think people need to realize that there is a big enough difference between AM4 and AM5, and they are all good. Nobody is saying anything negative. Anyone who tries to tell you to buy an AM4, either you have such a strict budget and there's no way that this is going to fit in, or you're getting bad advice. So if you have $400 even and you cannot find $49 worth of pennies in your Pinto in the back seat, then for sure, yes.
Assuming
but I
it's
would
not
make
already on fire.
But I would make the argument that if that's really where you're at from a price perspective, you really need to be looking at used and the third party marketplace rather than new, because for $449, I would expect that you could get some fairly decent, 5800X3D, maybe a second, if you wait a little bit, and 9800X3D, I think we'll have enough people who will be looking at. I think that generation is going to get a lot of 5800X3D users off the fence.
Yeah,
on the performance.
I think so. Yeah.
Anyways,
so moving on.
Okay, Intel. Okay.
Oh.
Intel has run into, we've talked about them a lot, and so we don't want to kind of beat it, horse that's already dead, but it needs to be said.
Yeah.
We know that financially they're having some issues. We know that they're going to have some liabilities when it comes to warranty work that they're going to have for a foreseeable future. Two big things we're seeing that are coming out. Intel has came out and said that there's going to be another stability patch in September for 13th and 14th gen. What do we say? This wasn't it. This is not the end of fix. This is because we had reviewers who were still seeing that voltage above 1.5 volts.
Yep.
And we're right.
Yep.
So again, right now it seems to me like if you have a 13th, 14th gen CPU, you should be really, really looking at BIOSes. And it's one where I don't typically tell people, update your BIOS.
Yeah.
But if you have 13th or 14th gen processors, you better be updating your BIOS, because you're going to be having some stability and damage to those things, to those processors. As soon as you're motherboard manufacturer releases stuff, you should be on it.
Same thing with AMD too. I mean, AMD's had the sync close, and so if you, regardless of who you have for a CPU, keep an eye out for BIOS updates because there's security stuff, and especially with Intel, there's self-deleting CPU issues still, even with the even with the patches that they've released, because they haven't fixed it, and the CPUs that are already damaged, we've said it, numerous other sources have said it. If you're starting to exhibit issues already, your CPU's toast. You got to fix it. And speaking of toast, it looks like Intel's fabs may be toast. They're talking about possibly spinning them off to either a subsidiary or to potentially some other company that's running fabs and has expertise in the market.
Look, I mean, people need to think about this from a financial perspective. They're going to have some liabilities. They're missing financial deadlines. They are behind the 8 ball. They're going to be firing a lot of people, a lot of smart people, and they need to do and start looking at drastic measures of what they can do and what parts of their business are worth money to spin off and sell. And this is 100% what this is referring to. The problem I foresee with this is who wants to. TSMC is really in a dominating piece.
They're pushing EUV, so they're ahead of the game.
They're so far ahead. I don't really see them. I really think you could see a Chinese investor or some other groups come in. The fab facilities don't do any design work, which is part of the issue. They just build stuff. And what they've been building is kind of expensive. And when you realize like what you have to pay to go from a 10 nanometer to an 8 to a 6 to a 4, it's not free or cheap. And if they're underperforming now, I just wonder where that piece comes in. But there are people who would be interested in owning the manufacture of their own chips. So, some of these, Tesla very well could be, because they're obviously going to need chips. So could they design and build it themselves? Very possibly. There's other companies that are going to need large volumes of chips. It's possible one of them might be interested, but it's gonna have to fit within that. And then the other half of this is it cheaper just to have somebody else build it for you? And I sort of think that is probably where a lot of companies are looking at. And Intel's sitting there saying, well, it's a whole fab facility, it's the whole 9 yards, and everyone's like, well, yeah, but I could go to Samsung or TSMC and do this. And not have to pay you a crap ton of money up front, and I could just be a customer, and if it's jacked up, then I don't eat the loss.
Right.
We'll see how that goes.
There's some big reasons too why a lot of companies might not want Intel's stuff, because Intel is still on DUV. They haven't moved to EUV or any of the newer processes that TSMC is spinning up on, because I think there's some cultural issues within Intel, and the reason it's expensive is because they're having to do 2, 3, 4, 5 exposures to a wafer, which exponentially increases the cost. And oddly enough, thanks to the magic of the YouTube algorithm, I kind of stumbled into a channel called Asianometry that does a really great breakdown over multiple deep but easily understandable episodes that explains the differences between the way Intel's doing things and the way TSMC and other companies are doing things with with their fabs. And it all comes down to the way Intel's doing it, and the fact that they have yet to get any EUV stuff on their lines, or at least any evidence of it, because EUV would cut their costs dramatically, almost instantaneously. But, it's all up in the air right now because, Intel has hemorrhaged money. They stopped doing the dividends. And, like you said a couple of episodes back, it's just going to be bad news after bad news for the next while until everything finally shakes out. And that's sad.
I think my loaded question is if this is legitimate and what we're hearing is them really trying to shop themselves into selling that. Um, if you're an Intel employee, you need to be thinking very seriously about career options you have outside of Intel because let's be honest, companies that are spinning off and selling sections um, of their corporation is a very corporate thing to do.
Yep.
Now, I don't doubt that I'm not sitting there and telling Intel don't do that. Okay, but I really think that people inside Intel need to realize the happy music is legitimately over. And whether you're getting free bananas at the cafeteria or not, if that doesn't tell you something, then this has got to be an eye-opening piece. And anyone in the left really needs to just kind of be aware of that. So,
yeah.
Real quick, we've seen more leaks of RDNA 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All I'm going to say on this topic real quick is that I do believe we're going to see more and more of these. I think the only concern I have with these is how accurate are they? Do we think that these are coming out and maybe a little sandbaggy? I don't know. Nobody knows. We'll know when we actually get pieces. Review samples, and you start hearing people from reviewers as they get stuff.
Yeah, because the drivers are still beta quality too. So,
yeah,
we're looking at potentially beta silicon and beta drivers that just aren't ready for prime time.
With that being said, if the timeline is for them to come out September or October, which is what a lot of the leaks are starting to get really serious about saying, okay, the stuff, the leaks that we see now have got to be fairly finalized. Drivers can obviously be updated and they'll go through and make optimizations. But when in Geekbench leaks like this, I can just imagine that you're not going to see a huge swing as they focus more after synthetics into more games. So I think this is a good indication. Um, Albeit I wouldn't put a lot of merit in final clocks or power usage because I do believe that's up for debate. And I'm excited to see what this looks like because, again, with that 7600X 3D, if this comes in at the 399 price point and gets really aggressive because they can sell it for 399 and still make money, I think that is going to be the deal of Christmas pass. And because I mean, let's be honest here, RDNA 4, the grandeur of RDNA 4 is that NVIDIA has been driving the market so expensive that gamers can't afford it. And RDNA 4 is like the second coming of technology Jesus. And he has come to fix our problems with cheap graphics cards and many, many frames. And I think that if that is true, we all need to be widely grateful because NVIDIA is going to have to respond, which means lower pricing.
Yeah.
And
I think the 8000 series is going to be the Steam sale of graphics cards this cycle.
And me personally, I've got a 7900X 3D, so it's not a huge bump. I will have to admit, I have already felt compelled to already pre-plan and pre-buy this when it comes out because I want to vote with my dollars of what I support. And if this is the case, then I very well may be retiring or doing the pass me down of the 6950X3D. I mean,
Congratulations, kids! You're getting an upgrade.
or
Yeah, no,
something
and
else.
that's and that's the beauty of having a family that appreciates gaming, because everybody gets the hand me downs. So
Yep.
yeah, and speaking of hand me downs, well, not necessarily hand me downs, but more of a down beat. I'd like to have a moment of silence for a non-tech. Thank you. Because they were a staple in technology reporting for a very long time. I mean, they were pre-Web 2.0, if I recall correctly. And
Their first was a K62. Their first
that
review was an
was
AMD K62.
1996, I think. Was that
Yep.
right around there?
You know, people will see the Land Addict signage, on the YouTube channel and here, and I'm sure there are. I don't know. There's probably three middle-aged guys out there that remember Land Addict. Um, but me and Serial were really pushing and doing Land Addict, and it was stuff like a Nantech that really pushed us to kind of do something along those lines.
Yeah.
And all I can say is that the media and the tech side has really been beat down. We've lost a couple of large media pieces, and I think a lot of that is maybe, and I think Nantech's probably in this group of not really able to pivot as more people go to YouTube, and these content creators, because people don't necessarily want to read it, they want to see it, and they want to have a personality, a talking moose, tell them what they like and don't like about things. um, I'm mooses and penguins talk a lot, and I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
And um, unfortunately, I feel bad, because I think AnonTech was a good thing. They had tons and tons of charts and just everything.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, from my understanding, they inspired a lot of different sites like PC Perspective, Gamers Nexus. Tom's Hardware was in that same realm of when they started, and they were direct competitors and made each other's product better. And you know, I think when Anon stepped away, and I think was it Intel that hired him, or was it AMD that hired him?
not sure.
Because when he got picked up by one of the CPU manufacturers, kind of the same way that PC Perspective's Ryan Shrout did, and after that, it just for me, I didn't use them as much once Anon had left.
Could we see a because so let's just throw this, theorize. Let's say that he does not have a long-term tenure at Intel left, because there's a number of them that don't. Could we see that kind of reborn? Again, possibly. I hope so. I wouldn't be opposed to it. It would be good. Um, I I think that is never a bad thing, and I think we kind of need to just be open to it. So
Yeah, I'm
anyways, look,
I'm ready to move forward.
Internetopia, we are going to keep this a little short, and because we're going to start changing it up, we're going to do Thursday night, we're going to have like the after hours show, a little less, probably shorter. You're going to see a shorter episode on Mondays and Tuesdays, and a shorter episode. We break it down. So keep some changes there going. Um, but one last thing I want before we sign off, drivers, AMD Radeon drivers
I
updated
forgot that.
on August 29th. So, and I don't think it's a huge, it's not like frame generation or anything, but it is an update. So run out and get that. And ARC was on the 24th. And then make sure everyone's doing chipset updates, even for the old like AM4 sockets. I do believe we're going to see some of this trickle down performance to some of these lower end CPUs.
Yeah.
And you're going to have some vulnerability fixes coming through the way. So,
yep. Well, with that Windows patch, I am seeing a little bit of an improvement on my 5800X. So, yay. That's a win. And with that win, thank you everybody for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and do stuff all down the doobly-doo to appease the algorithm gods. And
hit the thumbs up.
Hit that like button and subscribe. And I think I already said that. So until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Take care, guys.